with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes. Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here live in studio with my co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
And we together are going to craft that hour of radio that you're going to talk to your grandchildren about in hushed tones called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your families, and even the people you don't like, because believe it or not, all of us together are mixed up into the world's ecosystem. And so we need to talk about these things that we're going to be looking at in the next hour. And we have an interesting show lined up for you for the next 15 minutes or so. Rebecca and I are just going to be chatting with you about various things. Then we have a guest, a returning guest. Joseph Oppegaard-Peltier III is calling us in from Minnesota, where he's going to give us the latest on the Line 3 problems there, where they're fighting a tar sands pipeline. Then we'll hear from our wonderful, fantastic, incredible, amazing advertisers and sponsors. Rebecca will be talking to us a little bit about, what was that again?
Stevia.
Stevia, okay.
Friend or foe.
And then we have our ecological news segment where we got some interesting news to talk about. But luckily, I want to start this show with some very good news. I was wrong.
Yay!
Last week, I made a huge mistake, and, it's just one of those demonstrations of what they call observational bias, which is when you're expecting to see something, you have a tendency to actually see it. And I did a whole section in our environmental news segment about the graph of CO2 concentrations in Mauna Loa. And I think my mistake was acceptable or reasonable because our show was in August. It was August 1st. And usually on August 1st, at the start of the new month, the NOAA puts the last month's averages onto that graph. And so I looked at that graph. I saw the last dot, and it was way up high there, around 420 parts per million. And I thought, okay, it's August. That's the July dot, because it's not like
That's how it usually works.
That's how it usually works, so they're not all labeled. And for some reason, NOAA didn't get around to actually putting the July numbers in there till around Thursday or Friday. And so last Sunday, I looked at that dot. I thought that was July. And so I thought there had been no drop in CO2 globally from June through July. And had that been true, we would pretty much be done, folks, because that would mean that the incoming CO2 has overwhelmed the outgoing CO2 that's being absorbed by the plants here in the Northern Hemisphere. Well, as I said, I was wrong. When NOAA finally did update the graph, it was a nice, healthy drop. So around 2 parts per million drop from June to July. So the apocalypse is not happening this month.
I wonder if it's helping us that apparently a lot of airline flights have been canceled lately.
Well, yeah, actually, there's a lot of CO2 sources that have been reduced. Like there's fewer airline flights, and
right.
A lot of businesses did go under, and a lot of businesses, to give them credit, are reducing their carbon output. And actually, there's a story or something I wanted to mention. Turns out that the fracking industry right now has no one is willing to invest in the fracking industry.
Good.
Yes.
It's a bad investment on several levels.
Well, it has been for the past 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, $500 billion has been pumped into the fracking industry by private enterprise, by people investing their own money. and they've all lost money.
Oh, that's great.
Now, the fracking industry has kept going because the federal government has kept giving them incentives to keep going. But after 30 years, investors have finally reached the point where they're like, you know what? I'm not going to do this a fifth time. I'm not going to lose my 100,000 or my 2 million or whatever people who have money to invest lose on fracking again. And so when you do fracking, when you first drill those wells and open them up, that puts huge amounts of methane and greenhouse gases into the air. So yeah, you may be right, Rebecca. So I just wanted to get that one out of the way.
It feels a little bit like, London after World War II, where things were ostensibly back to normal, but, they weren't normal for a while. They still was like they were on rationing for 10 years or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're not out of the woods yet, but at least we're not experiencing the apocalypse right this minute.
We may indeed be in the eye of the epidemic, as it were.
Could be. And so, I forgot to mention that this hour, hopefully you'll be joining us at some point. Give us a call at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. I have the phone right in front of me, and if I see that blinking light, I'll frantically signal Josh, and he'll put you on, and we'll start talking. And we could talk about any environmental story or any issue that you've seen or heard or want to talk about, environmentally speaking. And I had a kind of a nice experience last night. I was out getting petition signatures. As you know, if you're a regular listener, we are fighting the Bowling Green Municipal Utility Board, who have put a penalty on solar panels, that have people having solar panels on their houses, and they've cut the amount they reimburse people for solar electricity because they don't like it as much as they like their coal power that they're paying 10 cents a kilowatt hour to get.
All righty then.
So anyway, I was out petitioning, but I had my car parked at one of the free park chargers that Bowling Green has. And when I went back to my car to go home, there was a little group of 3 people that were like, they were very cute. They were like around it, and they're like touching it, and like they were going over to the charger and like grabbing the holster and like shaking it, like, what does this do? And so
like you came from another planet.
Yeah, well, it did seem a little like that because they were from out of town. They had come into BG to have a nice dinner, and they had never, literally none of them had ever seen an electric car before charging. And so I got to talk to them about it and tell them, how much mileage I get. Right now I'm over 60 miles per gallon. And
I know how you hate to talk about your electric car. That must have been an imposition.
Yeah, that's a good point there, Rebecca. Yeah, they triggered me, right?
Yeah.
All I need is that trigger, and off I go. But it did make me think. I wanted to mention in today's show that right now I'm over 60 miles per gallon. I'm about 62 miles per gallon. I haven't had to buy gas for my van since July 1st.
Cool.
So, as you know, if you're somebody who's driving a gas car, the prices are way up there, over $3.40, $3.50 a gallon. I haven't had to do that, and because I've been able to get plug in most of the time. So it's been really nice summer so far. I probably will have to get gas sometime this week because we're going to take a trip up to Michigan.
Ooh.
Yeah, because we're going to go camping. And the reason we're camping in Michigan...
We're going in Michigan.
Yes. The reason we're going is because in the middle of the week, on the 12th, 13th, and 14th... No, 11th, 12th, and 13th, it's the peak of the Pleiades meteor shower.
Oh.
Or no, not Pleiades, excuse me, Perseids.
Perseids.
I always get those mixed up. The Perseids meteor shower, and there's supposed to be 100 meteors a minute during this peak time.
Okay, the Pleiades are supposed to be sisters in mythology or something, right?
Those are the 7
What's
sisters.
the deal with the Perseids? Are they related to Perseus?
Yeah, it must be. We'll go with that.
Something.
If somebody else knows for sure, I think it is. I think you're right. But if someone knows for sure, give us a call at 877-909-1007.
I'm a mythology nerd, and this is a gap in my knowledge here. It troubles me.
Yes. Well, so hopefully someone can enlighten us. But there's a Dark Sky Campground up there. We're going to some place called Port Crescent.
Okay.
which is one of those registered dark sky places.
Is that like up north?
Yeah, it is up north.
Cool.
It's
Yeah.
right. Actually, it's right at the tip of the thumb. You know how the Michigan's that mitten shape.
Right.
So right at the tip of the thumb is Port Crescent State Park, and that's where we'll be camping.
I'm interested as a Michigander who has relatives all sort of scattered all over the state. Yeah.
So looking forward to that. And again, that's another thing we like to touch on this show is that if you're someone who's like raising a kid, right now light pollution is so bad, it's entirely possible that your child has never actually seen the Milky Way or never actually seen a night sky full of stars. And that's a fundamental human experience, I think, because that's...
I tell you about Vidavoo in
No.
Wyoming. At the time I knew somebody who was going to Wyoming, grad school at Wyoming State. The first or second night we were out there, we wanted to do something fun, so we went out and got hot cocoa and looked at the stars at Vidavoo State Park. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of stars.
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen so many stars in all my life. It was crazy.
I know. When you get one of those really dark night skies, there's no moon, no artificial light around.
Yeah.
You could literally just spend half the night staring up at the stars because it's so beautiful, and you can start to see colors and things that you don't normally see. I was in my backyard last night. I could see Jupiter, and I could see Saturn, and I could see maybe a dozen other stars, but that was it. So.
I knew this girl from Wyoming, or I met a girl once who said that, oh yeah, I'm from Wyoming, I moved here and I miss the sky. And people are like, oh, but there's a sky here. And it's like, no, there's not a sky here.
Yeah, no.
We have something we call a sky. It's not really a sky.
Right. Well, and so we're almost ready to jump over to our interview with Joe. But before we do, there was one more thing I wanted to say about my car.
Of course.
Surprise. I had a conversation with somebody else this week, and he was saying, well, aren't you folks with the plug-in cars, aren't you just like using coal power? Isn't that really just as bad as using the gasoline? And the answer is no, it's not just as bad for a couple of reasons. One, we know from our guest on the show, Mark Jacobson, that electric cars use a quarter of the energy to transport you the same distance.
Wow, okay.
Because, electric motors are just so much more efficient than gasoline motors. It's incredible. So, A, you're using less energy overall. But B, we are using... The grid is getting greener. The grid is getting less carbon intensive, and as long as you're fighting to make that happen, as long as you're trying to keep the grid going in the right direction, having an electric car is actually an incentive to keep that path.
Very true.
To keep things getting greener and greener. So no, you can buy an electric car without feeling guilty. Now, that's of course far from the ideal. I mean,
whatever happened to those French fry cars or grease cars people used to have?
Oh, they still have them.
Okay.
Yeah, those biodiesel. Yeah, they're still around. But I mean, ideally, in the far green future, I would not have had to drive my van in at all. I would have gotten on the solar powered train that runs between BG and Toledo.
I'm hugely in favor of this as a bus rider. There needs to be a lot more. People are all complaining about Biden, the gas is too high, and I'm like, well, let's just make a lot more trains.
Yeah.
And then have high gas prices like in Europe, It's cool.
Yeah.
You don't need one.
Yeah, it's possible that gas was too cheap and there just isn't enough public transportation.
And it works because there's enough public transit that really a car is a recreational item.
Right.
For most people.
And, if you have the car in the garage and you get it out at vacation time, or you maybe take it once a month somewhere, and all the rest of the time you can just ride a bus or a train, that actually is going to save you like $10,000 a year.
Yepers.
So which would you prefer, But right now, most people don't have a choice because they're in America that public transportation is so bad that you're forced to have some kind of car. But it is changing, and the question, of course, is will it change fast enough? Will we get to the carless, or I shouldn't say carless, the car optional future fast enough to save the planet? And hopefully we will, and
but we need to light a fire under it.
yes,
Figuratively, but not literally. There's enough fires. We should just rename this show the "What's on Fire This Week" show. It's coming down to that.
Could be, but
the ocean.
but part of going to the carbon-free future is to make it as difficult as possible to keep expanding the carbon infrastructure, and that's what we're seeing over in Minnesota, where the people being led by Winona LaDuke and the Native American tribes out there are doing everything they can, literally.
Ooh, are we about to hear from one of them?
Yes, that was the lead in, right? Thank you. Our good friend Joseph.
I take a malicious delight in sabotaging your leads in like that.
Well, Ed, you're pretty good at it, Rebecca, I must say. All right, so as soon as this interview's over, we'll be able to take phone calls again, so get your pencils out and write your questions down, because we'll be happy to answer them. And I also forgot to mention that any time during the show, you can text in at 419-973-5841, and we have our high-tech texting receptor thing, in other words, my cell phone, ready to take your text at any time. So, all right. So, Josh, let's go to Joe.
Anim Boujou. I am Ernest Joseph Oppegaard-Peltier III. I'm with Honor the Earth. And currently with the Line 3 protests, we still have numerous camps being held throughout northern Minnesota. Currently our Firelight Camp, along with the Wild Rice Camp, they're holding a Treaty People Walk for the Waters. And that's being hosted by the MN350 Sierra Club North Star chapter, the Wild Rice Protector Camp in Bagley area, the Camp Firelight Encampment, and then Minnesota Interfaith and Power and Light. They're holding that walk starting today, and they'll be walking all the way to the Minnesota Capitol by August 25th. And the walk is to hold a large event to celebrate the walkers and to tell President Biden to step in and direct the Army Corps to cancel the pipeline permits. Besides that going on, Honor the Earth has Honor the Earth presents Water is Life, Stop Line 3, featuring Bon Ivory, Mira Fresh, David Huckelfeld, the Armed Forces, Annie Humphrey. I love me some Annie Humphrey, Charlie Parr, and a whole list of others, including our local Corey Medina and brothers. It's hosted by Winona LaDuke, Honor the Earth, the Hippocampus, Superior Siren, David Huckelfeld, and the First Avenue and 7th Street entry. Those are going to be two huge events that we're holding on right now. That Honor the Earth presents Water is Life is on the August 18th over in where was that at? I want to say Duluth. I want to say it's in Duluth.
So that's a live event then, or is this a film?
Live event.
Okay.
Check out Honor the Earth on Facebook. We have that on our events. And then also honortheearth.com. On the Frontline News, we are talking about what our tribes are doing, and currently White Earth is suing the Minnesota DNR for violating our wild rice rights. The White Earth Nation of Ojibwe is suing the DNR in tribal court on behalf of the wild rice, arguing that letting Enbridge Energy pump up to 5 billion gallons of groundwater during the Line 3 construction puts the wild rice at risk and violates our treaty rights. This is to be believed the first case brought in the United States tribal court on behalf of the rights of nature. A movement gaining momentum around the globe is established legal rights for nature and the ecosystem rather than treating them as just property.
Yeah, I don't know if you knew this, but here in Toledo, we had one of the very first Natural Bill of Rights things go through. It was called the Lake Erie Bill of Rights, and the city of Toledo actually voted to grant the Lake Erie legal personhood, but that was then overturned in the Ohio Supreme Court. But for a while there, we were we were kind of in the front in Toledo. So it's nice that this is still being picked up, and I know it's being carried forward in a lot of other places.
Well, to us in Anishinaabe, we are the land. So our wild rice is our ancestors. It's us. That's what we're going to become in the future. Same as our lands, our waters, and our wildlife. Those are my ancestors. So giving actual rights to our lands and our wildlife, that's something that we should be doing, and that's a part of treaty rights, in my opinion. And that's, we kind of tie in together a lot with what MN 350 is doing with the Treaty People Walk. And it's, we honor our treaties. It's Section 5 of the United States Constitution saying that treaties are the supreme law of the land, which our judges, our senators, our congressmen, and even our president have to follow by.
Right. And so Enbridge has taken this 5 billion gallons at a time when you guys are really having a dry spell there, right?
Correct. I was just listening to the Farm Report on my way to an event earlier last week, and those farmers on the southern part of our state are losing crops. Our soybeans, there's a bunch of farmers, because soybeans won't grow as tall without water, they're having to scrap acres and acres of their cropland. And in this time when the DNR is sending water north to go help with the drill, it should actually be being headed south to help with our crops. Our agriculture here in Minnesota is our core economic staple, and threatening our economy here in Minnesota just for a foreign company for temporary money. Because literally, like I said last time I was on your show, these jobs are temporary jobs for the pipeline. They should be happy that we're spreading it out as long as we've had so far, because really, pipelines usually typically take about a month to 2 months to get through an area, and then those jobs are gone. We were able to spread this out, and currently are spreading this out almost a year now. And in courts, we've actually pushed it out longer than that. But the construction itself, we spread out for a year. And it's not fully constructed yet. The battle is not over with. We are still fighting for our treaty rights, and not all of the tributaries of the Mississippi have been drilled yet. So we still need folks to come to our camps. So we still need folks to help hold a space with us, and put themselves on the line for our water, for Mother Earth, and for our wildlife here.
Right.
And when we talk about the Mississippi and drought status, our farmers feel that, not just their farmlands, but the Mississippi is the route that our farmers get our crops across the nation. It's full of a bunch of dams, locks, and keys over there, and if we would have to shut down the Red Lake River, which is one of the tributaries from the Mississippi, start at Canada, where the line starts at, and all the way, say 40, 50 miles down river, which leads you up to about Erskine area, that's going to affect the Mississippi and the water levels to get our crops to market. We are in severe drought status, and they've been dewatering our freshwater bodies all across northern Minnesota. And we've been asking, what are they doing with the water afterwards? We've seen random trucks spraying on the sides of the road, and it is concerning on how they're addressing the wastewater afterwards, because the water is used to help break up and lubricate the drill and break up the soil underneath. And they pull that out, but they add a bunch of different chemicals which are protected by trade laws, so we don't even know what's being used under there. That water, we don't know what's happening with it, and that water is dangerous. And what we've seen here in northern Minnesota are frack outs. And what's a frack out? It is when you're drilling under our wetlands or under our rivers, even on dry ground, and you see that water come up through the ground up to the soil levels, up to the water levels, and that's contaminating our soil. That's being driven all throughout our wetlands. And if you know what a wetland is, let me just give you a picture of it. It's a bunch of different veins all throughout our topsoil of just different waterways and everything. So once a wetland gets hit or gets contaminated, it spreads throughout the whole wetland because there's routes throughout all of that acreage. So we've seen roughly about 7 frack out locations, with some of those locations having numerous frack outs. And a lot of those frack outs actually are happening on the wetlands themselves. The Camp Firelight has seen, I want to say, 3 total. And Camp Firelight is located on wetlands area. That's, scary. It's scary what we're doing to our lands for a Canadian company, and oil that's not even going to be used for U.S. consumption.
Yeah, they always, when they do the permits, when they're trying to get the permission to do these pipelines, they always say, we're going to use the latest technology, it's going to be clean, there won't be any spills, and then there's always spills. And you're saying you guys have already seen 7 of these spills of the drilling fluid?
At least 7. Well, we've seen 7 locations, and some of those locations have had numerous frack outs at them.
I see. So the damage is being done. The damage, of course, that the pipeline people said would not happen.
Correct. And it's happening all throughout the current line construction area where they're drilling under our bodies of water and under our wetlands. That's where they're centralized on. Because, it's looser soil. It's not, compacted down.
Mm-hmm. So, again, you guys are right, and the pipeline people were wrong. And,
correct.
And yet the drilling still continues. They get to keep going, even though they started the whole thing on false pretenses. So I saw that Winona LaDuke herself actually got arrested recently. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened there?
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to discuss about that, and I'm not fully informed what's going on with that court case. So I don't want to infringe and overstep my bounds on that.
Okay.
But yes, Winona LaDuke was arrested, and public knowledge is that a different county had conditions that she was not supposed to violate going on Enbridge property, and I don't know if she was on Enbridge property, but there was an arrest done, and that county put out a warrant after we made bail. So ultimately we had to pay bail twice. And we had 7 from Firelight get arrested last week, or earlier this week. And I want to say about 23 over near the Red Lake camp from a different camp that came in there. And then the week before that, we had roughly about 40 or 50 arrests.
Wow. So the total is somewhere over 500 now, right? Or am
I would take a gander guess and say, yeah, over 500.
Yeah.
And they're not. It's not cheap bail. It's not. It's 4,000, 5,000. We've seen up to 9,000. And some of the charges we've seen out here are horrendous, up to felony charges. And that's not how you address people that are dealing with their First Amendment rights. That's wrong. And then on top of that, those arrests are being done on treaty lands to treaty holders, the indigenous folks that are in the movement themselves. And there's a lot of cause for those arrests and those charges to be dropped because we are upholding our treaty rights.
Right. And you're the entity that you're up against is breaking environmental laws by, spilling frack water and yeah, it's a terrible situation. And again, this is one that, we mentioned this last time we interviewed. This is one that should be on the front pages every day because it's really, this is sort of the front lines of protecting us from more of the global warming that's happening. So, we'll do what we can here on For a Green Future, but we're grateful that you came on again, Joseph, to talk with us.
No problem. Have me anytime. I also want to say we have a team in the local Bemidji's Dragon Boat Festival, and we're rocking it out there. We have a bunch of youth from our horse clan that's holding it down with some of us older helpers,
Uh-huh.
So it's been a really great experience. We've had 2 runs already, and depending on how well we do, we'll probably go for a 3rd one and maybe take a medal.
Wow.
Those youth are excited.
All right, and there's like 20 people on each of these boats. Is that how?
20 people on each boat. We have a drummer. We have everyone with oars working together. It's a beautiful sight. A lot of us are getting soaking wet. It's a fun day out on Lake Bemidji today.
All right.
And, that's what we're trying to save, and that's what we're trying to protect is our wildlands, our bodies of water, our Minnesota's main economic staples, our agriculture, our tourism, and, everything to do with our land.
Right. Well, okay. Thanks very much. And so one last time, if people want to keep up with you folks, they go to where?
So I'm with Honor the Earth, which is honortheearth.org. And you can follow us on Twitter and also on Facebook. There's a bunch of different organizations that are teaming up on this movement. A few of them are MN350, Bemidji 350, the Rise Coalition, Ginu Collective. We have a bunch of camps out there, the Red Lake Treaty Camp, Fire Lake Encampment, the Wild Rice Protector Camp, Shell River Camp, and Namwa Camp. We need people here. If you're interested in coming to northern Minnesota, camping with us, holding down space, please check out stopline3.org/hub. Now, stopline3.org/hub. Miigwech and Gigawagamin.
All right. And thank you, Joseph.
And that was our interview. Pretty intense. I mean, the battle is continuing. They're not ceding any ground, but some ground is being taken from him. And he, I think there's a lot of morale going, when you're in that kind of situation. You don't want to focus on the negative, but the fact is that the drillers have managed to drill a number of the passages that they're trying to do going under the Mississippi and under some of the tributaries. So they're progressing, but as Joe said, they're progressing much more slowly because there's a lot of people putting their bodies on the line. But I also thought it was very interesting in the midst of all this conflict, in the midst of this whole thing, they're having this Dragon Boat Festival. They're celebrating the water that they're trying to protect, and I just think that would be so cool if.
Dragons and water are related in Asian culture, and dragons are benevolent water spirits.
Nice. And, just imagine for a minute if the Maumee were clean enough to do that.
They do have dragon boats on the Maumee.
Right, but you don't like to get Maumee water on you.
You really don't, no.
No, when you get
It's better not to.
When you get the water from a clean lake like the one they're on you, it's just like part of the fun. But when you get covered in Maumee water, you're kind of like, I got to get home.
People complain about the geese going to the bathroom in the parks, but guess what happens when you flush?
Yeah,
The goose gets to swim in it all day, every day.
Right. But hopefully, one thing in the green future is that all the bodies of water in the country will be that clean. I mean, because that's the norm.
You're here.
The situation we have here in the Maumee is not the norm because we're allowing too much agricultural runoff into the river. So that's going to have to stop. But one thing that we'd love to have continue are our advertisers and patrons. 4 Green Futures brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy, from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every single day of the year. And there's several ways to find out what they're doing over there at the Wood County Parks. One is to call them at 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. Another is to go to their website, which is very simply www.wcparks.org. That's wcparks.org. And you can also go to the App Store and download their app, which is also just WC Parks. And of course, you could look for them on all the social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc., etc., etc. And that's the Wood County Park District. Our other source of revenue here on 4 Green Future are our patrons. And these are wonderful, brave people who've gone to patreon.com. That's Patreon. They searched for 4 Green Future and up popped our page. They looked through the various monthly membership possibilities and they picked the one that fit their budget. And so a little bit every month painlessly comes out of their account. You don't even feel it. Trust me, folks, you don't even feel it. And then comes over to our account, and that's one of the main ways that we can keep bringing you this show. Please go to patreon.com and become a patron today. Okay, so now it's time to hear from Rebecca, and we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, stevia. Let's hear about it.
Okie dokie. Well, this week I helped my roommate put in our fall garden, and she decided to put 2 stevia plants in it because she's diabetic, and we're gonna use them as a sugar substitute. So, as I kept telling her, what the heck do you expect me to do with those? I have no idea. She's not going to do it. So I tried to answer that question. Right away, there's some bad news, which I feel like I have to lead with. Crude form, unprocessed forms of stevia allegedly may, according to some studies, have bad effects on your kidneys, your blood sugar, your cardiovascular and reproductive system. It's said that there is a way that it's mutagenic, but not in a way that it's used by humans, which you can eat it raw as well as boiling it or drying it or all this different stuff. So I don't know what people are doing to it that's making it mutagenic exactly.
Injecting, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I just would not do that on principle, personally.
Right.
So, yeah, you should probably talk to your doctor before you use raw stevia, anything, or stevia that doesn't, come in powdered form from the store. There's a couple of forms of it that have been approved. In different countries, there's like wildly different policies about stevia. Just, every place in Europe, Japan, Korea, Peru. It's everything from completely unregulated to banned to approved in some forms. I get the impression they need to study it more. It seems like maybe there have not been enough studies or something. But yeah, the stevia it's actually the stevia rebaudiana plant. The form that's been FDA approved is I'm gonna try this again. Rebaudioside A, I believe. Right.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's kind of unpronounceable. But yeah, apparently the dosage is you can use like a 1/4 teaspoon powdered stevia in place of 1 tablespoon of sugar because apparently it's 30 times stronger, sweeter.
Wow.
Or the equivalent, if you get it in liquid form, 6 to 9 drops of liquid is a tablespoon sugar. 1 teaspoon of sugar is a pinch or 2 to 4 drops. Oh, it can increase your appetite too, so sort of, mixed effects and people who need to lose weight potentially. It's native to Brazil and Paraguay. It was used by the Guarani people, probably still is. Not fermentable, interestingly, like so many other, honey, sugar, all that stuff. It has 0 calories, has an aftertaste of licorice or bitter. Some people think it tastes bitter. Named after a white dude named Petrus Jacob Stevius. Japan is the biggest user of stevia, apparently. It works because it has something called glycosides, which are molecules with glucose residue bound to non-sugar substances. So it activates the tongue's sweet and bitter receptors, but it's indigestible, so it comes out as urine. Yeah, you can some uses would be you can just put a few mint and stevia leaves in a cup of tea and boil it. You can do that, although that's one of those things that you should, maybe ask your doctor about, just in case. It can be used to sweeten lemonade, tea, sauces. It can be used as an edible garnish that's sweet. You can dry it and put it in a food processor for a minute and then use it in baked goods. This is saying 2 teaspoons. Maybe I meant, I think I meant 2 tablespoons of stevia equals 1 cup sugar. Look it up. Or you can make a syrup out of it with 1 cup of warm water to a 1/4 cup finely crushed leaves. Let it set for 24 hours in an airtight container. Strain out the leaves, and it can be concentrated further by soaking it on low heat. So those are some things you can do with stevia, but, we're not sure whether you should or not. But then again, when you get, sometimes, for some people anyway, obesity can also have some health risks. So, you got to look at your own individual situation, probably.
Right. And it's also probably one of those things that if you, are taking, a cup of stevia every day, you may get in trouble, whereas a tablespoon or teaspoon every now and then.
Right.
Well, I don't know. I'm guessing. So, all right. Well, thanks very much for that.
You're welcome.
I didn't even realize you could grow stevia in a home garden.
Me neither. Well, I think it's like in one of those things that's like an annual up here and a perennial down south, possibly.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca.
Gotcha.
And now on to our ecological news segment. Still plenty of time for a call at 419-973-5841 for texting, or 877-909-1007 for calling. And first news, this is an anniversary sort of episode. Today is the 76th anniversary of the dropping of the nuclear bomb on Nagasaki. Right. And a few days ago, of course, it was the 76th anniversary for the dropping of the bomb on Hiroshima. And it's an anniversary worth remembering in terms of ecological consequences, just because, the plutonium that was produced in that explosion, and those 2 explosions, actually the first one, I believe, was the uranium bomb, and the second one was a plutonium bomb. And that contamination's going to be with us virtually forever in human terms. The plutonium takes about 250,000 years. And the uranium, actually, some of those isotopes take, I believe it's like 24 million years.
Holy guacamole.
So the damage, the contamination that was done at that time is still with us. And that's an important thing to remember about radioactive nuclear contamination, is that it continues to build up. This is one of the reasons why it's such a bad idea to put radioactive fracking water on roads as a de-icer, which
very bad.
Which they're trying to do, which the Republicans are trying to push through the state legislature right now. It's because the radium that's in that, the radioactive elements that's in that water, the radium, will continue to build up. And so if you do that year after year,
oh boy,
the ditches on either side of that road, maybe the first year you're going to go, oh, that's not much more radioactive, but after 30 years of it, those ditches are going to be, they're going to set off the Geiger counters like crazy. So it's best just not to do it.
Yeah.
Just like it's best not to blow up literally hundreds of thousands of people. The Nagasaki bomb killed, I believe it was 170,000 people in an instant. So
what is the deal with, the genetic damage? Are people that are, descendants of the people who were bombed still having problems?
Well, it's hard to get a good study to really clearly demonstrate that, because nobody wants that to be the result.
Right.
So it's hard to point to a study, but the way I look at it is, how could you not affect the genetics? I mean,
It definitely didn't do anything good for them.
no, you're putting radioactive elements into the food chain, into people's lives. There's going to be definite genetic damage, and certainly there is a lot of solid evidence that first generation, those babies that were born immediately after, or the women who were pregnant who had children, then the genetic damage there was extremely clear. There were a lot of problems. Subsequent generations, it kind of got lost in the noise of it's hard to say exactly. So I believe there has been, and we have other studies of other species that have been exposed to radiation that show, there is continuing genetic damage. But it's hard to point. You can't really point to a human study to say, that shows definite genetic damage through the. It's sort of anecdotal, and it's not carefully controlled. And so the answer is, I think so, but I can't point you to a study that says it.
Interesting.
So, yeah. All right. So another anniversary we want to talk about is this is the 1-year anniversary of the start of the Fairy Creek encampments up there in British Columbia, where they're trying to save the last 2% of old growth forest in British Columbia. And so this is when a year ago was when they first put up a camp, and people started to practice civil disobedience and put themselves in front of the loggers and tried to physically stop the logging. And that actually happened 1 year ago this week. And the movement there has grown, because people there it's more of a close-knit community, I guess, up in British Columbia. There's not as many people, but 80% plus, the surveys show from 80 to 95% of people in British Columbia want the last remaining old growth completely protected. But Horgan, the premier, who's the equivalent of the governor, is just absolutely committed to destroying it.
Okay, yeah.
So it's a big controversy, and the arrests there, I believe, are also over. I think they're over 700 now. I'm going to check on that number next week. So again, those like two places in the North America where there are people battling as hard as they can to save the environment, getting arrested, doing everything they can, and almost no coverage down here in the mainstream press. So, but we'll keep watching, because we know that this is part of what's necessary for a green future, is for people to take these kinds of actions and physically stop the destruction. So it's pretty simple. All right, on to some good. We've got some good news for you here this week. And that is that renewable energy continues to grow, continues to expand. And in fact, two little bits of good news. In 2020, in EU, renewables beat fossil fuels for the first time. And here in the good old US of A, according to the Energy Information Agency, they put out a report on July 28th. Renewables, that is wind, solar, and hydro and geothermal combined, actually provided more power to the United States than either coal or nuclear.
Cool.
Yeah, and the actual numbers are pretty good. Renewables provided 834 billion kilowatt hours, or 21% of our demand. Coal only produced 774 billion, and nukes provided only 790 billion kilowatt hours, and that's down 2% from the previous year, because you got nukes closing, thank the Lord, and they're not being replaced. Again, thank the Lord.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's not all rosy, because what has happened is natural gas has continued to increase, and the natural gas going up pretty much matches the coal going down. And so last year, natural gas provided 40% of the electricity in the United States. So we need to fix that, and we need, the solutions are obvious. I mean, we got to put up more solar and more wind and more rooftop solar. the National Renewable Energy Laboratories have estimated that rooftop solar by itself could provide 42% of all the electricity that Ohio needs. And so, there should be solar panels on every single roof.
For sure.
But it is good news. It's very good news that renewable energy passed both nukes and coal for the first time in 2020. So
go get them.
Yeah. So we're doing it. And again, the question is, are we doing it fast enough? And the answer is we don't know yet.
Yeah. So the thing is to not slow down, just in case, because we don't know how far behind the monster is.
Right. Yeah, we can hear it. It's back there, but if you turn to look, it might catch you. So, just run faster.
Exactly.
So, all right. And one more good piece of good news here. You're getting some really upbeat stuff. Quietly, Congress has passed something called the PFAS Action Act, which we've talked about PFAS before. That's polyfluoroalkyls or perfluoroalkyls, and those are chemicals like Teflon was the best example, the old Teflon coated pans. And it turns out those molecules are extremely dangerous in the environment, and they cause all kinds of problems. And this one passed the House in this past week, and it's probably going to pass the Senate.
And at some point you're going to get lazy and frustrated and grab a fork instead of the plastic spatula. This.
Oh, yeah. People end up eating that stuff.
Exactly.
With almost every meal. All right. But this was, unusually, this was a bipartisan effort to get this through. Everybody, Republican and Democrat, wanted it. And it's interesting because the difference here is that the chemical industry has already gotten out of the PFAS business. They looked at the numbers, they looked at the health effects, and they said, you know what, we're not gonna fight this one. It's so bad, we're just gonna stop making PFAS. And
wow.
They did that like 8 years ago. And it is somewhat heartening to see that even Republicans, if you don't have lobbyists waving money under your nose, are able to, in those situations, in that special circumstance, they're able to
right.
To actually do something environmental, pro-environmental.
In the public interest, yes.
Yeah. And they're, of course, Republicans are kind of desperate to be able to say, hey, I've got some pro-environmental stuff, because for the most part, they're just destroying the planet as fast and hard as they can.
Right.
But that is good news that the PFAS Action Act is happening, and it's going to provide billions of dollars for cleaning up PFAS contamination. And, it's going to, I believe, I have to double check this, but we've stopped making PFAS, but other countries still make it. I think it's going to restrict the import of products that have PFAS in them. So let's hope, as you say. All right. Well, that's pretty much everything I had listed to talk about in my careful show preparations. I just want to say thank you again to our audience. And I actually had someone this past week contact me who said, Joe, I'm going to become a patron. And,
all right.
And they haven't done that yet. But the joy it causes me is boundless, because, it shows that not only do people listen, but people actually care, and they care enough to keep these things coming. So we do have about 2 minutes left of the show, which would be enough time to read a text at 419-973-5841. You could call, but you'd have to talk really fast. Of course, we could do that on this show sometimes, especially after we've had our coffee.
Yeah.
Yes. So just an overall observation is that I think things are shifting. I mean, these people that I ran into at BG who are all interested in my electric car, they went and got into SUVs, all three of them. But the fact that they're looking at my car, and they were interested in the fact.
They wanted to know.
They wanted to know. And I think they're considering it. It's no longer this strange thing that just a few people do.
Right.
And I am seeing more and more of the Chrysler Pacifica hybrids. Oh, and we decided on our Facebook group, Chrysler Pacifica people, that we're going to give each other thumbs up as when we spot each other on the road. So that's the sign. Some cars have special signs, and motorcyclists have their signs. Well,
like the trucker salute. Yeah,
right.
Okay.
So we've got thumbs up. So thumbs up to all of you. I hear the theme music, so we're just about done. It's been a pleasure talking to you folks. We'll be back next week. This is Joe DeMare,
And Rebecca Wood.
and we are signing off.
Oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia.